Oh, tonight's gonna be a good one, guys. Well, actually, it's today, but I'm recording at night, so keeping it real. I have had the privilege of hearing about this beautiful soul for more than 3 years from a woman who I consider family on such a visceral level. So when I got the opportunity to drop in her Instagram first and then into her world, I took action and did so. And Ssanyu, it has been a gift to my heart and soul ever since. So, for all of you guys, as you know, I love to bring healers and people of purpose and of service on to share their story of really showing up authentically and in love and in service to the world. And today I have the privilege and honor to speak with Senyu, who is, oh my gosh, you're a bone healer, you're a narrative medicine clinician, you're a professor at Columbia, amongst other things. You have created your own, gosh, like way of healing. So, like, essentially. And so I'm just excited to learn about it all. Thank you for being here, Senyu.
Thank you, Kerri. It's so great to be in conversation and also be able to see you in this conversation. I think that is such a special gift when we start to connect. You
Yeah.
know, I appreciate us doing it our way. So way of I'm going to call it the corporate musings and ways that maybe we were taught to connect. So video and voice just felt so good, and this was so seamless to connect with you today. So thank you for having me.
Oof, the pleasure is all mine. Trust me. And I imagine the community is going to be thrilled when they're able to really connect and learn about just your purpose and how you show up in service to the world, because it's quite beautiful. You know, something that you touched upon, so I'm going to dive right in, is you and I very quickly did agree that we were going to show up on our own terms, whatever that looked like, without creating these expectations of each other or of ourselves and how we interact with each other. And so I'm curious, how did you kind of land in a place where you're confident enough to show up the way in which it feels really good for you rather than how we've been taught we needed to show up in the world?
Mhm. I'm giggling because I was just with a friend this afternoon. I took a little pause from work, and we were speaking to individuals looking at us and thinking that we're a lot younger than we are. And we both attribute it to living in a life of purpose, being happy, um, allowing for love to come and go in our life. And then we started laughing, saying, we're not in that hustle of trying to get somewhere, but stay. And so I use the word trying because trying for me is like you're not going anywhere, actually. It's like trying to touch my shoulder. Well, just touch the shoulder.
Yeah.
So I then shared with her how I had such a chip on my shoulder when I was younger, from 19 to 25, when I had to work full-time corporate America. I was in IT and finance. 19, found out I wasn't able to go back to college because of financial reasons, and I worked. And I learned a lot during that time. I was part of Mass Financial Services in Boston and the Y2K team. So we brought in the financial services through that time of like, oh my God, what's going to happen, with our transactions? We don't know how to add the extra zero. And so, can you imagine that was?
I can't. Now I'm just like, but you're bringing me back, right? The whole hype. Oh my
Yeah, so
gosh.
so anyone who does not, you can do math really quickly, you can probably figure out how old I am. So there we go. And we said, And I said, my experience of having that hustle, having to be at a desk at, 8:30 in the morning, I had a Nextel on my hip that would call me in the middle of the night if transactions went down. And, I was doing all that stuff from 19 to 25, where there's a lot of energy, right? The body is
Mhm.
different at that time. You're more interested per se in trying new things, and you're not set in your way. And that was my experience. And I didn't have to, or no, didn't have to. I chose not to go down that road in my 30s. I
Yeah.
chose to explore a different avenue, which was my heart, which was what I was yearning to do. And that enabled me to see that there is a path that which I've chosen and that which feels good to my nervous system.
Mhm.
Now, let's be clear, okay? Being a social entrepreneur and being a teacher is not, for the faint of heart, right?
No,
Okay.
it's not.
But you learn tools. I
Yes.
learned tools in my toolbox. My mother set me up and my sisters up for success with these tools. I was just saying to a friend of mine, in the womb, I learned what it meant to recite affirmation. In the womb, I understood what the Lord's Prayer meant. I've had a journey of being through different religious experiences again in the womb. My mom was a Christian Scientist when she was pregnant with me. Um, when I was born, I was a home birth. I went through the experience of going to a Baptist church because growing up in Newton, Massachusetts, and also being from East Africa, Uganda, I wanted to be around Black people.
Yeah.
And found out that that wasn't necessarily a place that which I felt received as a woman of color from African descent, first generation. My mother, she is Black American, but there's a lot of historical, cultural colorisms within America
Which is
that
so crazy to me,
it
right? Like,
absolutely
forget
is.
about the white and the black divide. Having, a relationship with Nana, who's from Ghana, just the segregation of different tribes and stuff was eye-opening to me, and just kind of reinforced for me why I need to show up in love for all, because hopefully regardless of background we can collectively in love show up together. But you're right, I can't even imagine what that was like for you.
It was a beautiful experience, honestly. I was a young teenager, and I just wanted to be with my friends, who looked
Mhm.
like me. And
Yep.
so being a empath, as I have understood from a young age, being really emotional and being able to pick up on things, I knew that I was different. You
Yeah.
know, I knew that when I would go to East Africa, I grew up in Mombasa, Kenya. My father's from Uganda. I knew when I'd come back to Newton, Massachusetts, that they'd be like, "Oh, so are there elephants that walk along the street with you?" And I'm like, "Absolutely not. Like, I got to go on safari, and that's like 4 hours away from where I live. So, like,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
no." Um, so excuse me, I say that all to say that my gift that God gave me was to learn at a very young age what it feels like and what it looks like to have to hustle in spaces and places that don't feel true to who you are.
Mhm.
And again, going back to my own spiritual journey that started in a religious space,
Yep.
I became born again Christian when I was 13, when I was living in Mombasa, Kenya. I was in a Pentecostal church at that time. Um, I've learned how to read different spiritual scriptures and understand, that these are stories, and wonderful stories that they are. I understood that it didn't make sense that there was white Jesuses all over the place. I'm like, wait, Jesus is a melanated person. Like, how is this? I would go to Italy when I was, a teenager, young adult, and I would go to the churches in Italy and see melanated Jesus, see melanated Mother Mary. And I'm like, So how is it that it didn't get across the ocean?
Yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
what is this? So, and my mother has always, and my father has always, and my family has always uplifted me as this beautiful chocolate little girl who's grown into this beautiful chocolate woman. So when I go into places and people are like, "What? You're this age?" I'm like, "I am." Why? Because I live a really happy life. Now,
Yes.
let's be clear. When I was, you know, a young adult, having parents from the backgrounds that they are, education is very important in our family. Degrees are important in the family, world travel, all this stuff. I had to buck their system of like, yeah, no, I'm not interested in working in X, industry. No, it's okay. Thank you very much for this introduction to so and so, but I would like to do this thing and I like to do it this way. And so I had to train my parents and mentors to let them know I want to do it my way and I'm open to the suggestions of how best to do it my way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it has taken courage to learn how to let go and to let God, to let go and let love
Yes.
permeate throughout my body. And at 46 years old, I can see how that has amplified the youth and the child in me
Yeah.
because that
It's
energy is
interesting.
important.
Isn't it beautiful how your parents fostered this beautiful independent um spirit that was brave enough to do things your own way, and yet when you did things your own way, you had to retrain them to be able to hold space for you as you did it your way. I think it's interesting because I didn't have that, so I'm always fascinated when people are like, yeah, I had these supportive parents, but then when I want to do my way, I had to be like, nope, I'm doing it my
Yes. Well, coming from an African household, um, it is real big in our culture to work hard. You're never working hard enough, right? Discipline. My
good to
goodness, that is a word that permeates throughout my home. Discipline, work hard. Where's the grades? Have this certain job. And that was how I grew up. And I'm grateful for having that energy
yeah,
and that guidance. And it was helpful to understand how to tap into that discipline, how to tap into that, work hard energy, and then learn how, ooh, there's spaces and places here where I can now inflict and affect ease into this whole process.
yeah.
How the heart, when we listen and when we bear witness to ourselves, the body also connects with the heart. And if you are able to truly, again, listen, it takes you so far. It takes you into spaces and places that you would never imagine. You would never
Yeah.
think doors would open up for you. And that is why I do the work that I do. That's why I developed this method that's rooted in heart spirituality and my experiences through um, health and healing, sickness and trauma, as
Mhm.
well as the clinical practice of narrative medicine, which is really rooted in how we are teaching our physicians and clinicians how to be present with their patients, to have a full embodied, holistic approach to health, to not see the person as their illness, but to see the person as a whole as a whole human.
Which is so critical because you and I mean, we're very aligned. We have different language, but we speak the same heart language around our mind, body, and spirit, right? Our energy. Um, and if if we know that our thoughts create our reality. Our thoughts are going to directly impact our physical experience. And it is critical that we, work with doctors and practitioners to look at the person as a whole rather than just their physical symptoms, because really that's not getting to the root cause. And then all we're doing is medicating the surface and not actually healing the person. So for the audience, if you could, I have two, it's a two-part question, but one, can you just explain a little bit more deeply what narrative medicine and what it is you teach is? And second part, I want you to talk about what it is you've developed to really work with people so that they can heal themselves from a holistic approach rather than just, surface level physical or mental health issues.
So let's start with what narrative medicine is. So the practice, so narrative medicine is a practice. The practice of narrative medicine is to attune to these three pillars: representation, affiliation, and attention. So when we are able to stand in our representation of who we are, there's a beautiful synergy that happens when we spend that attention to ourself, and that which creates this energy that allows us to be in the place of authenticity. And so the founder of narrative medicine, Dr. Rita Sharon, is not only a phenomenal physician, she is a phenomenal individual who decided to get her PhD in the humanities and literature to understand that connectivity to doctoring is also through the humanities, that we can't disconnect that.
Mm,
Now, let's also be clear. Narrative practice has been a practice for centuries.
yeah.
And I'm proud to say that Dr. Rita Sharon was courageous enough to go to an institute, to step into her institution of Columbia University and say, we need this as a master's in science program, as a practice, because we are missing elements to our doctoring.
Yeah.
In doctoring, you're not taught in the curriculum, in the medicine curriculum, there is nothing that teaches an individual to feel. It is all about bringing in the numbers, the quantitative research, to look at illness, to essentially build a doctor and a clinician up to know all.
Yeah.
She understood that that is not serving communities at all,
It
right?
well, not it can't because, well, one, we're so individualized and our experience plays such a critical role in how we present as a whole person in this world. So I think it's so beautiful. And to your point, she is quite brave to have stepped into such a place of, academic excellence and say, I'm going to challenge the system.
Yes,
So kudos to her. Yeah.
yes. So when you think of the symbol of medicine, the caduceus,
Yep.
okay? And then when you think of this, the symbol that which I use in a spiritual connection with an individual, which also looks as the caduceus of the figure eight, okay? Of harmony, the Lammenskit, one might call it, or the infinity sign, that brings in harmony and balance. So doctors are supposed to bring in harmony and balance, but we've missed in the study of doctoring the harmony and balance through the body. That is the spiritual body.
Yeah.
So it fascinates me that, you know, we are now speaking to, the ways in which that we show up for our patients, and I'm
Yeah.
speaking from a clinical point of view. So that narrative medicine practice is really to bring attention to empathy and compassion that physicians and clinicians, when steeped and supported through narrative practice,
Yep.
will automatically conduct in their patient physician interactions. Now, there's a lot of physicians and clinicians out in the world who already have this innately in them, right?
Yep. Yes.
So again, it's not rocket science, as I say. However, when I went into sort of researching at a time of my life that I wanted to continue my education, I found this program at Columbia, and I found it so fascinating because at the time, I was really sort of pulling away from nonprofit development work that I was doing in sub-Saharan Africa for small organizations in Boston. I had moved to New York City at the time. And honestly, I wasn't having a great experience of finding positions in nonprofit development.
Mm,
And I will say I know why now,
I
because
do too.
I didn't want to go into the workforce. I didn't want a 9 to 5. I was tired at 30 something. I was tired and I wanted to do my own thing. I had started a nonprofit in 2008 with my sister while I was still in Boston. We started a cosmetics company. We brought in Nylatica shea butter from Uganda into the beauty industry here in the United States, and we were building and expanding, and I wanted to do that. Now,
Yep.
when you start businesses, as you know, Kerri, you got to pay the bills. So I knew that I needed to pay the bills, but
Yep.
I was really resistant in finding in my body, in my consciousness, I was resistant in finding that what would be a 9 to 5 development job. So therefore, God didn't give it to me.
Woo, I love that. Let's just highlight that for the community. It cracks me up when people like, "Oh, it's just not working out for me. It's just not working out for me." I was talking to a beautiful soul who is in finance, but she writes books and she's like, "Well, my business didn't work out in finance." It was like, how do you expect the universe to support you when that's not your purpose or your passion? It's not going to happen. You're going to be like,
God,
"Nope."
nope.
Yeah.
I just digress for a second.
Yeah.
I even said, so I worked in the restaurants in
Mhm.
Boston, the South End, some of the popular restaurants, and from very high end to local joints. And I remember before I left Boston to come to New York, I was like, I am done with the service industry. Okay. So now we're in New York and we're looking for not only a development job, which would be a 9 to 5, but I was like, okay, let's make some money on the side as well. So I had my friends from different cities saying, oh, I know this person who like owners, like I was
Yep.
meeting owners of restaurants. And I know I said the prayer of I'm no longer going to be in the service industry, but I felt desperate,
Yeah.
right? And so I was like, no, we're desperate. We're gonna do this. Girl, please.
Nope.
God was like, nope, that's not
Nope.
gonna happen either.
Yep.
So
Nope. You
I was
know,
like, okay, so what are we gonna
what am
do?
I gonna do now? I love that. But you know what's so funny? I also want to say something. Nonprofits run very much like a 9 to 5, like you said, and I think that is where we need to change the paradigm in nonprofits, just like we need to do, like you are working towards changing the paradigm in the medical field, because everything is a whole, we need to have a humanity approach to everything we do, whether it's in the nonprofit sector, the corporate sector, and the health sector, for us to really achieve the harmony, the infinity, symbiosis that we this world is seeking so desperately. So it doesn't surprise me that even the nonprofit that you started didn't serve you, because there's still a lot of bureaucratic stuff within that frame. Yeah.
Just to clarify, the nonprofit that I started was serving me, but
Okay.
going into a nonprofit that would pay me the money to continue my nonprofit, Peace
Yeah,
and Happiness Foundation, was
would not
not serving me.
yeah,
And I'll tell you why it doesn't serve many of us, and why these different um, spaces of, whether it's education or healthcare or finance or nonprofit or, you know, whatever industry, that's the word I was looking for, these industries are not working now, is because we're unhealthy communities, we're burnt out, many people are not living in their purpose or their passion,
yep, yep,
and we have been taught, especially our generation, that it's not feasible to live in a passion place to make abundant, prosperous lifestyles
yep,
happen. So, what's happening? Our generation now, in our 40s and 50s, are dying early. I had a friend die at 34. She was a lawyer, very high profile lawyer in Philadelphia, died at 34. Okay. I had another friend from prep school, died at like 29. And I'm going to
yeah.
say lung cancer and bladder cancer. Now, when we think about where those things happen in the body, what's happening, you know, bladder, you're holding on to shit. Okay. Lung, you are not opening
You
up
can
your
totally
body or your
swear on
heart.
my thing. There's
Oh,
no filter.
fantastic.
Yes.
You're holding shit.
Yep.
The lungs, you're not open to speaking your truth and voicing your heart's desires. And that was real, real, real for me to witness. And
Yep.
so going back to narrative medicine, I understood that I needed I needed this community. Yes,
Yeah.
degree, but I needed this community to live, because 13 years ago, I woke up paralyzed from my fingers to my shoulders.
Really?
At the time, I was in New York City for less than 2 years. Um, I had finished my Reiki Master Attunement in Massachusetts, and I knew that there's something happening, like spiritually embodied, something was
Yep.
happening. I did not put two and two together that my father was the chief of the bone healers. Another story. And my partner at the time was in Costa Rica on a travel job, and I called him on WhatsApp, and I let him know what was going on. He was very worried, and he introduced me to a spiritual father at the time. Um, Rest in peace. He's passed away during COVID. And again, prophets and healers during COVID were being taken off of this earth for several reasons, just to put a pin in that. So I was able to connect to his spiritual father, and I went to his church, and his congregation put hands on me. They prayed. Um, I remember feeling the spirits around me. I remember feeling the saints. And like, let me preface too to your audience, I'm a spiritual individual. I am not a religious individual any longer.
You and I both. But and so here's the thing that my audience knows, but you talk about narrative medicine, which is so beautiful. My lens is quantum physics and the study of neuroscience, right? Which all of it's really it's leading to the same solution, just from a different perspective. And quantum physics proves that we live in a conscious world. So
Yeah,
I tell people all the time, you don't even have to say you're spiritual, but when you break down an atom to a quark and the
yeah,
subatomical particles, and it no longer is visible.
yep,
Now we live in a, you know what I mean? So they
yes,
get it. They totally
yes.
get it.
I love that, because my work has now branched out into neuroscience in the past four
Ooh,
years, right? It
that's
has
my
to, it
jam
had
right
to,
there, Ssanyu.
and so as someone who also understands metaphysics from a very young age,
Yep,
to connect the dots. So I call it threading. I have been threading so many different experiences, embodied experiences, experiences that I've witnessed of
yep,
others, that others have witnessed of me and been able to thread it. And it all comes to the same place that if you believe in nature, then we all, excuse me, can say we are of a spiritual body, that we can connect to nature. If you believe that nature exists, that you believe that the trees can emit that oxygen to allow us to breathe, right? Well, then you believe in spirituality, quantum physics, metaphysics, whatever you need to use to define the knowing that the it is real,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So,
Well,
mhm.
something you said that I want to highlight to the audience is you had these experiences, and that's a gift you give to the world, is that it is so individualized, right? The way in which I stumbled upon the fact that we exist in love, I understand inherently that we are loved, that is all our spirit, like that is, but that is through an inner knowing, through your experiences, through you witnessing. And so that's what makes you an exceptional healer and teacher, is not because, guys, I need you to hear this, she studied at Columbia, and not because she's, fascinated and been trained in Reiki and all the things, and because your father is a chief. It's because you've viscerally experienced that knowing for yourself, and that makes you a healer. And that's important, Senu, and I highlight that because there's so many people doing good work, but if they're not doing it for themselves and experiencing it for themselves, they can unintentionally harm others. And I see that a lot, I think, and I would guess that you do as well.
Oh, absolutely. One of the I believe one of the reasons I am not a doctor, psychiatrist, therapist, is because in the work that I do through the Pause 3 method that I developed, I get to share my personal story.
Yes,
So,
that is why I will. People are like, "Kerri, you were brilliant. You need to go back to school." I'm like, "I need to do no such thing. Thank you very much." Because I love who I am, and I love connecting my story, because our story is our superpower. When I can say, "This is what I experienced, but this is what I transmuted," that to me has more of an impact than having a degree. That's my personal opinion,
sure.
and I respect anybody who's chased that. That takes work and discipline, but it's just not for me. So yes, I agree, and I think that if we're connected on such an energetic level, right? Throughout history, it is stories, much like you were sharing about the spiritual script, right? They were stories that were able to seep into you, and that is how we healed each other. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that
So please
that's
go ahead. Sorry.
those stories are what embolden me to be able to authentically connect with others. I am not saying that the physicians and the clinicians that I know don't connect deeply with their patients either. I'm just saying I'm not beholden by a system that says
Right.
I can only share XYZ because
Yep.
I am beholden by a system that is of high regard within the medical script, right?
Right.
So,
And and it's so funny because I work with a mother and a son, right? Individually. And the mother said to me prior to hiring me, she was like, "Well, is that ethical?" I was like, "Well, by society standards, no, I'm breaking every rule." I was like, "But I am not beholden to those rules." So, and also I think that, there is a real power in me being able to show up in service to you as I work with your son, because you guys are connected. So anyway,
yeah,
but I do want, like, before we run out of time, because you and me could talk for days, let alone hours. I would love for you to share what it is you do, how you show up in service to people, because you've guided and helped aid in the healing and the empowerment and the beauty of somebody who means so much to me. So I know your work is
thank you.
profound, and I want the community to hear about it. So if anybody is looking for, support, they can see if you're the person that could really be of service to them in that way.
Thank you, Kerri. I know I've touched upon different stories, and I think that's what's really cool about podcasts as well, and having this connection is that one who is listening, if parts of these stories, because you're not getting the full story,
Right?
right,
Yep.
really resonate, then you will connect. You will be
Yep.
guided to connect to me. So one day I will finish that story of being, paralyzed, but that led
You are
me.
welcome to come back
No, no,
anytime.
no. I say that to say because there's so many one days in this multi
Yeah.
hyphenated life that I live that has created this person called Sunyu,
Yeah.
right? And so that healing trauma that I went through that became a catalyst into me understanding that Reiki, meditation, breath work, those are tools. That's wonderful tools that opened up a space for me to connect to my indigenous medicine that comes from
Yes.
my father, who is Ugandan and who is the chief of the bone healer. So that opened up a big thing. Now,
Yep.
from there, I understood that part of my work as a caregiver, I've always been a caregiver in some way. I'm the eldest of 10. So the
Oh, yes,
caregiving,
you are.
yes.
Woo!
So the caregiving has emboldened me to understand and take this journey of I was a death doula for 10 years. I'm now a full spectrum birthing doula. I think that's also something that is very poignant that I understand the life death life cycle
Mhm.
from a early age. Again, I saw my sister who's in her 30s come into this world, and I saw my grandmother at 16 leave this world. So the death doula and birth doula is so apropos to who I am. So I support people in that way. With that, it helped me create this pause 3 method, which I call stepping into your gift, which is gratitude and intention setting and forgiveness and letting go. Before I branded myself as Ssanyu Birigwa, which is where one can find me, I
Yep.
had a website called Let Go and Let Love.
I love that.
It stemmed from me repeating on repeat when I was a child. I've gone through a lot of different sicknesses. I healed myself from eczema. I was a competitive swimmer, so that was an issue around my skin. Healed myself through repeating, literally, I let go and I let God. I let go and I let God. Maybe I didn't really understand what that was, but I witnessed myself healing. So I
Yeah.
believe that we are all self healers. I also believe that we must bring in, the Western ways of healing too, because that gives us a different view of the body. Okay.
Yep.
So when we combine those two, and I've done a lot of study about indigenous healers combining that Western healthcare servicing, I understood that this pause 3 method only emboldens someone's or emboldens an individual's agency to advocate for themselves when they are with physicians.
Yep.
Okay. So
Absolutely.
it emboldens them to advocate themselves with their families. It emboldens themselves to advocate when they're in the workplace. It is a system to allow individuals to look at the stories that live in our body, blood, and bones. Now, as a bone healer, being able to articulate out from the body where you are hurting. I laugh with my mentees sometimes. I'm like, I'll get online with them and I'm like, okay, so why is your left hip hurting right now? Because I feel it. I don't want to feel it. Let's arrive right now and clear this right now. Thank you very much. And they just laugh. They're like, Ssanyu. And I was like, you can't, the body doesn't lie. You can stand here
Doesn't
or sit
lie.
here and say, oh, I'm fine. And I can be like, no, you're not, because I feel you. So being able to get into those spaces and places with individuals and in groups has been so important to me. And so as I have grown to use narrative medicine clinical practice to be parts of the roots of the work that I do, in the pause 3 method, I get to really work with different individuals. I work with physicians, I work with finance people, I work with women, men, you know, all different types of creeds and, nationalities. It is my way of sharing an institutional practice that which if you're not a student and you aren't able to walk through the gates of Columbia University, you will not get this information. And I think that's bullshit. So
Yep.
therefore, I have allowed myself to say, hey, we need to create spaces and places to understand these different knowledge and wisdom sets. And so not only does narrative medicine embolden what I do, but I also take it out through my other programs, through my other business called Narrative Bridge, to help communities attach the narrative and the storytelling through ways of creating healthier communities through diversity, equity, inclusion, access, and justice, through creating healthier communities through authentic communication, to find ways to bring wellness in the workplace.
Yeah.
So there are the umbrella, the larger piece is Ssanyu Birigwa. And
Yep.
then you go in and there's narrative bridge to work with
Yep.
companies. I love the one-on-one work that I have with individuals from, you know, the person that we share in common. I've worked with her for years. She expressed her intention of wanting to work through holistically, stories around her ancestors, around, her parents, around how she shows up in her life, in her relationships, because she wanted to be a mother, because she wanted to have deeper connections and more authentic connections with herself and other. And that's a really big point with the work that I do. And to witness her and for her to give birth to my first doula baby, okay, was like, this is just
Oh.
like, exactly, you
Yeah.
know? So
Yeah.
it's like I'm living a dream, honestly, I do retreats to Kenya. I have a retreat in June, from June 21st to the 27th, where I partner. I believe in partnerships and collaborations with
Yes.
other practitioners. So we're doing this retreat called Coming Home to Oneness, and it's on the Indian Ocean where I grew up. And we are there to just really enliven ourselves through Mami Wata and allowing that water to cleanse us and to come further into our purpose in life. I do different programming right now coming into April. We're doing an abundance summit in Boston, that I'm really excited about. I do different talks with universities, some people find me there. And what's great is language is very important. So I get to use different language in different places, but they always will get the healer in me. And I
Yeah.
think that's really important for all of us to understand. There's a beautiful poem by Maya Angelou that she takes pieces from Paul Laurence Dunbar's poem, The Mask. And she speaks about the different masks that which we wear. I acknowledge that there have been so many different masks that I have put on, and literally and figuratively, coming out of COVID, etc. We all have worn masks, but we all are wearing masks all too often, and we're suffocating underneath these masks. So I believe my work now, as I make little pivots into how I'm connecting with individuals, is to show them and to be a witness of them so they can be a witness of me, of how these masks can be taken off,
Yes.
how some individuals have the privilege to keep their masks off all the time.
That would be Kerri Lewis.
Yes, yes,
Yes. But
yes. And I learned from that. And
yeah,
I believe that we all need to speak to the truth of what we are stepping into in our lives and how we are showing up. And so many of the women and men that I work with want to pretend, because I also, work with women and men who are of Caucasian descent, that,
yep.
that they don't have that they do wear masks. And I'm like, yeah, no, you actually have the privilege to not wear the mask, but I know how traumatic it is to see others having to wear the mask constantly, or
Yes.
to witness others wearing different masks constantly. So let's go there, because that
Yeah.
means that you're empathetic, that you have compassion in your heart, and you're willing to actually put yourself out there and say, this is not right. But there's trauma in that, and we
There
need to
is.
address that.
There's trauma, but to your point, like, here's the thing, something that everything you said I love. Like, I'm just like ding 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 ding. And so let me break this down. Your pause dream method.
Yes.
Um love, 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 because for anybody who's watched me for any amount of time understands, because I've shared, gratitude saved my life. That was what started to change the biology of my brain. The Book of Forgiving by Desmond Tutu and his daughter, who I always, it's Mofoso Tutu or whatever. They're from South Africa. hands down the most recommended book that I send out to my clients because forgiveness is absolutely critical and letting go like, oh, I mean, you're speaking my love language so that because that is exactly the system in which I operated within my own construct to take down the mask. And now that I am the person of Caucasian descent who can show up and have the really uncomfortable somewhat at times traumatic conversations because in growth comes mess.
Mhm.
But how do you heal if you don't get messy and sticky and really, to your point, show up compassionately and empathetically and from curiosity and hopefully give people permission to not sit in guilt or shame, but like honor what has what is in existence so that way we can really break free from what is in existence. And so everything that you said is a culmination of how I live so that I can be that person who steps into bravery and is not afraid to sit in front of the firing squad and be shot at with verbal vitriol because I understand that somebody's going to be able to brave that so that way we can actually heal rather than slap stickers saying diverse, inclusive, but really not actually have that seeped into the experience that people are having.
You
So I
described
love everything you're
authentic
doing.
you described thank you. You described authentic allyship.
Yes.
That's
Well,
exactly
that's
what you did.
yes.
And, in the world of, inclusion and diversity and equity and all of the DEI stuff and all the acronyms and all that stuff, and I say stuff because we've now moved away, I see, with organizations and systems, and they are willing to say, "We did the work."
Oh yeah.
George Floyd has happened, Breonna Taylor has happened, come and go. We've done the work, we did the thing, we marched, et cetera, et cetera. But you know what has happened is now we are feeling the effects of not only 2020, 2021, 2022, but we're feeling the effects of 2017. We're feeling the effects of 1995. We're feeling the effects of everything. It is our generation that is feeling the effects of it because, like I said, I'm going to go back to how I saw my contemporaries dying in their 30s. Is
Yeah.
because we are not attuning and attending to our spirit. We
Yeah.
are vandalizing our mind, body, and soul with untruths and masking what is
Well, and it is because well, it's conditioning, it's
absolutely.
habits,
Yep.
and it is I mean, let's call a spade a spade. I believe when you strip everything down, I don't care. I studied Brené Brown's work 20 years ago extensively. I have so much respect for her. But we can say we have all these emotions. No, we have two: love and fear. If you show up in
Agreed.
love, trust and believe. It's not that soft, fluffy stuff we all think of when we think of love. That showing up and saying, okay, Senu, let's talk about microaggressions in the workplace because you are beautiful, chocolate woman, and I got the promotion above you despite having less education. It's being able to sit and say, who's George Floyd? Because I didn't know about that, right? Because that happened and that's okay. Look, you don't have to know it, but you have to be willing to at least say you don't know it so we can learn.
I heard this. I don't know who said this, but it was so true. And I have a mentor who actually says this as well. So yes, I do know who said this, but just tell the truth.
Yeah, yeah.
Just tell the truth.
But that is so Lanita, who I put you in touch with. This is why you guys will be like, "Phew." She said to me and she was spot on. She's like, Kerri, it's not that people don't want to do the work. It's just where do they go to heal once we crack them wide open? Because when you tell the truth, we fillet you open. And now you have to sit in that. And then there's no soft place to land while you try to make sense of what you are now realizing within your own psyche, and then how do you build from that. So I think we should pause, and I think that we should do round two, plus I want you on my other two shows. And so I have your information, but for anybody out there, what's one thing that you would like to leave them with, piece of advice or just a life lesson that you've learned, and how can they find you?
So, life lesson that I have learned, it takes courage to let go of things that you deeply, deeply feel like is yours to have.
Mm, that's good. Yeah, that's really beautiful.
Mm. And to also leave your audience, ask yourself and others, what brings you joy? Oh, there's so many more. Okay, I'll stop there.
Oh, I know that's guys, stay tuned for round 2 because it's just too good not to. This
I'm
is
ch
just
like, spirit is just like ancestors is like, "No, no,"
I
and I'm like, "Okay, okay, like, we
I
gonna come back. We gonna come back."
yeah, oh,
Um,
you coming back.
yes. I can be reached, at my website, Ssanyu Birigwa, SSANYU BIRIGWA.com. You can find me on Instagram. I'm Ssanyu Bone Healer. I used to be the only Ssanyu there, so it's really great to actually see my, Ugandan women coming onto Instagram and, my name out there. Um, and then Facebook, Ssanyu Bone Healer, and LinkedIn, if you wanted, I'm there as Ssanyu Birigwa. There's just very many ways to connect. I also say just DM me,
Yeah, I
just
did
get
it,
in there.
guys. I
Yep,
dropped
just get in
right
there.
into her DM and
Just
said, "What that bitch?"
drop
She
in.
responded.
I do. I do. And I usually respond like if you're gonna do a voice note, I'll do a voice note. If you're gonna do a video, I'll do a video. Like
Yeah.
I'm like, however you want to show up, I'll meet you there. And then if I feel like, I gotta send you that face so you can feel me through the voice and face, I'll do that too. But I love connecting. I believe in that prosperity and abundance comes with collaboration and connection.
So good. Yeah.
But I want to say this to leave to your audience, to how you just said you fillet people open and sometimes they don't know what to do with that. Where do they
Yes.
go to heal? I think that's very important for everyone to know because if they don't know where to go to heal, that's even more reason why they need to sit with why they don't know where to go to get healing, to get
Yeah.
support for their healing. And I always know that is such a gift that I receive when someone comes and I fillet them open and then, the return is, non-existent. I'm like, okay, I did my job.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is, I truly believe when people are ready for the teacher will appear. But we as teachers, it is, I tell myself this all the time. It is not my job to judge the outcome or have an expectation. It's to show up in love. And what you just said, spirit calls you to say, I'm like you, I'm connected. And so I'm not going to shy away from what comes up in me to say, but I'm also not going to have an expectation about how that lands. So,
Absolutely. Woo, once you leave that expectation, it's just like boom, everything just opens up for everyone, for everyone.
everyone, yes.
Oh,
All
Kerri,
right,
thank
guys, stay
you.
tuned for round 2. I'm gonna hit end to this recording. Everybody out there, be well. And to Sanyu's point, what brings you joy? Find it and then chase it. Thank you.